and unincorporated areas on the municipal boundaries of El Cajon. Those are the ones I was talking about.
So how is Flo doing with this?
Doing pretty well. Keeping track.
Mhm.
I think there is going to be like a lot of variation, but what I'm hearing from all of you is, that's okay. We're trying to assess all these potential changes, and I think it is, not going to be like these formalized draft maps, 14, 15, 16, but we're going to be able to work with all these little pieces and kind of see what really works and show that to you guys. Yeah.
And Alex, again, the key here is that you have what's needed to post for Tuesday. And then we have an ability to have an informed discussion about them without prejudging any of them or in any combination of them when we actually meet. But it's both aspects that we need covered. Co-Vice Chair Garcia, then Commissioner Serban.
I just have I guess a process question. The map numbering I found very, unnecessarily complicated. I wish we had just stuck with map 1 and then put a revised date on it if that was the map we moved forward. So I'm hoping maybe we can stick with 13A and 14 and then just put, revised or variation or something, as opposed to, now we're going to be dealing with what, map 15 and map 16. I would hope we don't have to do that.
Okay, we can, I'm more than happy to use whatever nomenclature the commission is most comfortable with. Draft final map 1 and draft final map 2, if that's of interest. It's simply a matter of what's most transparent to the commission and especially to the public. But we are where we are, so I don't want to revisit. I would like the concrete suggestions on what we should use to describe the two maps we're going to be considering. Commissioner Serban, then Commissioner Inman.
I'm sorry, I'll defer to Commissioner Inman.
Thank you, Commissioner Serban. To address Commissioner Garcia, if in this motion, instead of, we could number the bullets here. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the maps that we get back would be 13A-1, 13A-2, 13A- so on. Or it could be in combination 13A-1, 3, something of that nature. So it would be easier to trace it back to the specific motion. So that's what that was my comment, if that's agreeable.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that works for me. Thank you.
Commissioners, is that okay if we use that as a process? Because then I'll ask staff to replace all those with numbers. Thank you. Flo, that's workable, I assume.
Yep.
Very good. Commissioner Serban.
If we're done talking about map 13A, I'm ready to talk about map 14.
Let me just check. And again, I have, for some reason, I have limited ability to view all commissioners, so I apologize. Any other comments on this part of the motion at the moment? And as I understand it, we're still doing one motion with both maps. Okay. Seeing no other comments, Commissioner Serban, do you want to start on map 14? Is that what we're going to do?
Correct.
So let's let staff catch up with that. Please proceed.
For map 14, I have talked a lot about why I think this map is good. I don't want to spend too much time compiling all of the reasons. Let me just say that I think the one way that I think this map might be improved might be in response to some of the public comment that we received from the San Dieguito area. And what I remember those communities saying is that the way that map 13B treated that area is their preferred alignment. So what I would like to suggest is for map 14, I would like that area to be consistent with map 13B. And to be precise, what I mean by that area is the unincorporated area of the county east of Encinitas, north of the city of San Diego, and south of San Marcos, including the community of Harmony Grove, Rancho Santa Fe, etc. And I'm sorry to say etc. I think it's Rancho Santa Fe, Elfin Forest, Harmony Grove, Eden Valley, Del Dios,
Oh,
Fairbanks
so
Ranch, Whispering
let's let them
Palms,
catch,
and Sun Valley.
let's let them catch up.
Oh, sorry. Fairbanks Ranch.
And they're being moved to D2, is that correct?
On 14, that is 2.
Okay, does that capture it, Commissioner Sherman?
Yes.
Commissioners Katerina and Inman, I'm going to assume that everything being added remains friendly amendments until you say otherwise.
And
So we
I would,
have
I'm sorry.
that way.
I'm sorry, Chairman, but I would just say that I think with map 14, I think we heard a lot from the community about how they like it as it is. This was the one thing that I heard consistently from this particular community that they wanted changed. And as a reflection of how strongly I think map 14 reflects the public input that we've gotten, I think this is really the only change that I think we really ought to discuss to map 14. Other than that, I'm ready to approve it the way it is, other than this change.
Okay. Commissioner Inman, if he has something immediate, then Commissioner Krugliak, then Commissioner Chen.
So I was going to propose another sub motion, if you will, for map 14.
Please.
And that would be to explore moving the area in D1 that is approximately east of Lower Bowtie Reservoir into D2.
Thank you. Commissioner
Is that
Krugliak.
area bounded to the east by anything?
Imperial County. Yes.
Yeah. The county border.
Yes, the county border. Thank you. Yes.
Commissioner Krugliak. You're muted.
I'm just checking. So Commissioner Inman, by your motion, that would include Hamul. Okay, then I don't need to add anything else.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen.
So I would like us to have them take a look at moving Escondido into District 2 and moving Pendleton, Fallbrook, Bonsall, Rainbow, Hidden Meadows, Valley Center, and the Indian reservations north and east of Escondido into District 5.
Are we taking all suggestions right now?
hold on. Again, it really depends on the motioner and the seconder. Commissioner Serban, I do recall you saying that your case for not making any further changes. I also recall the change Commissioner Inman proposed, having certainly had a lot of community input and response. As for Commissioner Chen's, we probably need to have a little bit of a talk about it, but I want to give staff time to get it accurately. Commissioner Chen, does that number 3 capture it? Or do you want to add the full list there?
It's the tribes, yeah, Rainbow, the tribes, Hidden Valley, Hidden Meadows, and the tribes north and east of Escondido, yeah. And we did get input from the tribal commission up here asking to stay in that District 5 piece with Carlsbad and the other 78 corridor cities. And we have input from a lot of military people who said they want to keep Pendleton in that district also.
Right. Let me just make sure.
Add
we
Valley
have the
Center to
motion.
it.
Let's just make sure we have the motion correct first, or the language right. Commissioner Chen, do you mean on map 14, the reservations all the way east, for instance, including Santa Isabel?
I would say, I would say the ones that were in the old District 5, so San Pascual, La Jolla, and Los Coyotes, and Rincon, and Palma, Pala, Pachanga.
And you got to put Valley Center in there because now you've got them
Yeah,
all
yeah.
surrounding Valley Center and.
Yeah,
and
and Valley Center also. Thank you.
I would just point out that's a huge district
Yeah.
now, way above any,
No, that's actually very much like the old District 5 then.
no, you've still got, the 78 corridor is already there, which is a district in and of itself, if I'm not mistaken.
But he's moving Escondido into District 2.
Did you move Escondido?
Yeah, that's the first part.
Oh,
of it.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Never mind. Okay.
Okay. Now, again, commissioners, I would recommend considering all these sub bullets, not in terms of their merit so much as their practicality for a discussion in what is currently scheduled to be one meeting that begins at 10 a.m. on Friday the 3rd. And in that meeting, we not only have to get to a final map for consideration to approve the following week, but we have to do some very close looks at the district lines of that map at a very, very fine level. That is going to take time. And that is going to, if we have these kind of motions, I'm perfectly happy to entertain it, but it's with the understanding that the commission is going to remain available for several hours to go through all this. I just want to make sure of the awareness on that from a process point of view. All right.
And Chair, I had a question. Prior maps would still be in the running though, right?
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But obviously, the more we refer to another map that may not have actually had new analysis or updated analysis done, the harder it may be to bring that to the fore. But you're absolutely correct. No map has been formally removed from consideration. All right. So Commissioner Pons, Co-Vice Chair Garcia, Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Serban.
Yes, for all of the changes to the proposed maps that we're moving forward, at what point do we get the analysis from Dr. Gross's team and Mr. Adelson, because that's the critical piece in whether it passes the RPV and the VRA analysis and that litmus test.
The analysis is presently scheduled to be presented on Thursday, December 2nd. That is pending a little bit on timing for the public map hearing and even more so on what they actually have to analyze. Obviously, the more new factors they have to address, the more time they may need to prepare it. I have asked them to bear in mind that it would be useful for commissioners to see their analyses more than an hour in advance of the meeting. But obviously we can only request so much of them before the maps are actually prepared. Now, again, if Flo is able to prepare the various forms of these maps from these motions by next Tuesday, we can certainly ask Dr. Gross and Mr. Adelson, based on this, when do you think you'll have your analysis ready? But they have to both analyze these maps as well as provide the additional information that they've been tasked with at our last meeting. So it's an ambitious and potentially challenging production schedule, not to mention time for us to actually discuss those issues in those reports.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, the consideration that we taken on, the consideration now is just the population numbers. And I would still submit that the Voting Rights Act and the voting population numbers, not numbers, but how that rolls out is really essential to the final drafts that we come up with and we endorse. So I just don't want it to be an afterthought, and I just don't want it to become part of the crunch time process. That's all.
No, thank you very much for flagging it. And I would strongly urge commissioners to bear that in mind, because that will not just be an ask and a request of our two experts. It will be a demand on your time to consider it, discuss it, and integrate it into your thinking about the final map. Co-Vice Chair Garcia.
Yes, I guess I'm wondering why, given all of these proposals to evaluate certain changes to the map, that we were not able to add to at least map 13A, the request to have Flo evaluate moving Coronado and not Point Loma into District 1.
I don't know that we were unable to do it. I didn't hear it.
I asked, and I got shut down.
Okay. All right. I that was not my intention. So please add a new number 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown, did you want to add something? Commissioner Serban?
Thank you, Chair Bame. So am I correct in understanding that we will receive a separate analysis from our subcontractors as to VRA compliance for each of these iterations?
Not necessarily. We really can't ask that until they see what's involved in the maps. To ask them for every combination of every variation, no, I don't think that's realistic.
Right.
Ask them to analyze as best they can. We'll have to see. That is one reason why I am concerned about this many motions on 2 maps. And that ranges from the complexity of some of these things. Frankly, and Co-Vice Chair Garcia, I do not mean this in terms of shutting down or anything like that. But to say move Coronado into District 1, that is going to mean some additional work for Dr. Gross and Mr. Adelson to think through what that means in terms of ripple effects, because it's undefined. We have an issue with both the complexity and the simplicity of these details. And it's not that any one or another of them is incorrect. It's the combination of already up to 9 variations that I would consider a bit of a challenge. And just to preview, I'm honestly not sure how I'm going to vote on this motion for that very reason. for the practicality aspect. I
So
would
can I-
like to keep the conversation circulating, but Commissioner Servin, go ahead.
I mean, I think this kind of goes to my earlier question of how are we evaluating which of these numeric variations make it onto this motion?
Well, making it
Because I
onto
guess
motion is
in
one
this,
thing.
hold up. In the same way that Commissioner Chen has applied, is suggesting that we move Escondido into District 2 under map 14. I find that, well, why don't we do that to map 13A too then?
I understand the point. Procedurally, right now, we are taking all these because the motioner and the seconder have said they're willing to consider them as friendly amendments. Once we get to a vote or to the voting process, it will be perfectly in order under the rules for a commissioner to say, I would like to have a separate vote on whether to include this, that, or the other motion. And we could do that for all 9. It will extend the meeting. But that is under the rules how we would proceed with this. And again, that is why I am cautioning about, another reason I am cautioning about having this many variations to deal with. Because even if they were all approved, it's going to be a considerable discussion on the 3rd, in addition to other work we have to do. Commissioner Pons, then Commissioner Brown.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia, because I had endorsed your recommendation for moving Coronado into District 1. And then the response was, let's not do it just for the numbers. Well, in the interim, I went and I looked at the latest tracker, community of interest tracker, and there were at least 15 inputs that says, do not do that. And so that's why it sounded good at first, but when I looked at the community of interest input on the tracker, I mean, there were so many public inputs that said, do not do that, because they will lose their voice and they will lose their representation. And so that's for your consideration, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown. I think
With regard to moving Coronado into District 1, that could happen on either one of those maps. And that would take away the unsureness of using a ferry as a connector. Because then we don't need to worry about that. It connects to Imperial Beach, goes over into Chula Vista, and we can still go up into Barrio Logan and South San Diego and with District 1. So I say we try it on both map, also the map 14. And that is bullet 4, move Coronado into District 1. And I agree, though, there was a lot of discussion saying keep Coronado and Point Loma out of, because they're nothing like Chula Vista, and that's true. However, we used to play Coronado in football, from Casa Park and Chula Vista, so there were connections there for sure, and they're in District 1 right now.
As I said,
That's flexible.
it takes us into substantive discussion that I'm not sure we want to have at this hour.
Right.
I would recall that I think both the discussion previously on this and the memo on this issue was fairly clear that the contiguity issue is not a problem, and was so tasked that way. But again, I don't want to distract from moving forward on it. Staff, did you add? Thank you very much. Commissioner Larson, then Commissioner Servin.
It's already there on map 14.
Where?
It's already in.
No, it's not.
I'm looking
No.
at it right now.
Coronado,
Number 6
In
on
the
the,
coastal district.
yeah, Coronado's in the coastal district in both maps currently.
Are we gonna add the
You're right,
Escondido
sorry.
language
I'm
to
sorry.
13?
I'm sorry. Commissioner Larson first, please.
Okay, well, I think Coronado should be in the coastal district. And on the continuity issue, don't forget that we have the southern Point Loma in District 1 at the moment. There's no continuity between that and Coronado at all. So it got by 10 years ago. I think there's enough physical connections between Coronado and San Diego City that that shouldn't be an issue. I agree with Marguerite on that. There are no comments from anyone in Coronado who says they want to be in the border district, but there's plenty, as Commissioner Pons just said, there's plenty of comments that Coronado, the people in the border districts, that is Chula Vista mainly, don't want to be part of Coronado. So don't want to be associated with them. So that's just an issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Serban.
If we're considering moving Escondido into D2 for map 14, we ought to do it for map 13A as well. Exactly. If no one wants to consider it, then we should not consider it for 14 either.
On my screen, I can see neither the motioner nor the seconder. Amy or Ken, any comments on that?
They're two separate things, that Escondido has to be in District 5 in one of the two proposals.
Let me ask Co-Vice Chair Katarina and Commissioner Inman, any comment on whether you want that in both or just in one?
I feel that we need to keep these somewhat different. Because I don't think we're going to be able to make these two maps marry. And in my mind, it's more of a discussion for map 14 than it is for map 13. But Ken, I would appreciate any input you may have on this.
No, that is my sentiment. These two base maps, 13A and 14, are different. They're different for a reason. And there are variations off those differences that the commission wants to explore.
Okay,
And so I don't believe it should be a same set of motions across the two.
But what we're doing is we're trying to compensate, or we're trying to figure out how to move the middle of San Diego out of the East County. Why can't we explore possibly doing that by moving Escondido into the East
Escondido's
County
North
to
County.
compensate?
But we do have a method for trying to do that in 13A already.
Well, this is another method that's an alternative that's worthy of exploring.
I don't think it's worthy of exploring, all things considered.
By the way, Commissioner,
agree.
I don't think we're done at this point, right? This is not all the changes we can make. When we look at these at our next meeting, we can continue to make other suggestions like what you're saying right there. I don't think it rules out you making that suggestion at the next meeting.
Commissioner Chen,
Well, I'd like to see the impact of that suggestion before the meeting.
It's a very, very important point.
That's what these variations are meant for, right?
I would not count on that because unless we add a meeting, at our next meeting, we will need to move from these two maps and variations there too to a final map that includes a very close look at scrubbing all the lines for as possibly at a census block level of detail in order to meet our agreed timeline of voting to approve a map on December 9th. It will be very, very difficult to consider new ideas at that meeting. It will be less difficult to consider combinations of existing ideas at that meeting. But I would be very hesitant to have a brand new motion and expect Flo to somehow do the required analysis on what will probably be less, at most a few hours availability, and that's assuming commissioner availability. Commissioner Kubiak.
Instead of expanding, if there are things that it sounds like there are things that we feel very passionately negatively on. So it sounds like my proposal about Rancho Santa Fe and Solana Beach, there's a lot of passionate, don't want to do that. I'd be fine removing it from as an EG to point 2 in 13A. If things simply, if we do a straw man poll and we know they're not going to pass, and all we're doing is expanding the likelihood that we're going to be having another overnight session in December, I propose that we move them out, that we don't, just because we're throwing the kitchen table at it because we can, I don't think we should. So I think we can streamline this a lot. So 1 and 5 for 13A, I don't think these are at the same level of any of the other things. Keeping Harmony Grove and Elfin Forest together, bringing in the unincorporated areas of Escondido that are currently split on roads. Like, these are just like little edge fixes to 13A that we should do. These other ones, 2, 3, and honestly, it's 2 and 3, with 4 being a consideration as you do 2 and 3. Those are really the main big changes we're proposing for 13A. And I would propose that if we're trying to streamline, and if we do a straw man poll, and the likelihood of Coronado moving to District 1 is pretty compellingly not going to happen, then I would propose that we don't ask Flo to do it. But we can pull out anything else that is similarly causing consternation, and I'd be fine with that. But I don't think that the answer is just to add every idea into both maps. I think the better path is to try to streamline the things that we think are going to have a higher likelihood of success without overcommitting us in 2 weeks.
Oh, sorry, Co-Vice Chair Garcia, then Commissioner Serban.
Yeah, I understand that there is some opposition to looking at evaluating moving Coronado into District 1. I just want to point out that doing that opens up, opens up more space, population to move into the coastal district, which we're trying to look for a way to add more population. So it's not, it's not just for numbers necessarily. It's a way to problem solve. And I think one of the things that we're doing here, and that we all need to recognize, and that the public also needs to recognize, is that I think everybody, every community of interest, every commissioner, everybody, who's been paying attention is going to have to give up a little bit. And I recognize, but we're going to have to, I think everybody's going to have to give up a little bit and be a little bit dissatisfied or a little disgruntled about something in order for everybody also to contribute to the greater good. And, maybe I recognize that we heard from Chula Vista about, not wanting Coronado to be in their district. But this may be a compromise that will allow us to accomplish some of the other things that we feel like we need to accomplish. So that's why I'm not just thinking of, I mean, there are many, perhaps other ideas I could throw out. I just think that this one offered some opportunity for us to address one of the key issues that Commissioner Serban, one of the key issues that he has with map 13A, and that's the AAPI community that's he'd like to see in the coastal district. That AAPI community is still intact and still together. They just happen to be in map 13A currently. They just happen to be in the East County district.
Commissioner Serban.
Again, I don't agree with, I think, what your conception of the AAPI community of interest geography is, Commissioner Garcia. I think that, I mean, specifically 13A separates the communities of Convoy and Claremont Mesa from Mira Mesa and Penasquitos. I mean, that's fundamentally a separation of that community of interest. Secondly, I think going back to my point about Escondido, if we're truly going to explore what we can do with Escondido, the population of Escondido is about equal to the population of Mira Mesa, PQ, and Carmel Valley in that area. So I don't see why we can't, if we're going to look at iterations, why can't we look at that as an iteration? I mean, I'm not in support of moving Escondido into that district, but if we're going to do it for map 14, let's look at map 13A and see if that offers a potential solution to this number 2 problem.
Vice Chair Katarina.
Sorry, yeah, but Ken and I have already said we would like to keep these different. So I personally don't want to have all the same motions for both maps. Because then we lose the inherent value of each individual map. So I
don't think that's true though. I mean, we're seeing the variation of that potential solution as applied to this map. If it's a solution we're willing to consider, then we should consider it. If it's not a solution we're considered, then let's not consider it in either maps.
Vice Chair Katarina, did you want to respond to that, or shall I just go on?
Not really.
No, because I think the issue has been discussed. So
I think,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I think Rosette answered this already. We're willing to try to move the AAPI community in a way that you want into map 13A. So
Whoa, it's not the way I want. It's this is what the community is saying to us.
Okay.
Let's just make that clear.
Okay, fair enough. We are hearing from both sides of the AAPI community that they do want different things, and this is a little bit of a challenge for us. One of those maps is in map 14. We've heard from a group of people that they want to be in District 2. And that's what is reflected in this map. In 14. I mean, I think Ken and I both answered this. We would like to keep map 13A and map 14 somewhat different to retain some of the original themes in those maps.
Okay.
So I agree with Commissioner Kugliak. I think we should take off point number 6, the points that aren't significant. And let's look at the things that are going to be adding value, significant value to these maps. And this is one of the things that I've been concerned about. We're ping-ponging again, and we're reacting, and we're not thinking about what we really need to do to these maps.
All right.
So Ken, I mean, are you still in agreement, Ken, that we should try to keep them separate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's understood now. First, let me make absolutely sure there are no other motions, topics to offer. Okay, so what I will now ask is for Commissioner Inman and Co-Vice Chair Katarina, is there anything that you would like, let's say, bracketed now, so that they will not be included as a friendly amendment, but the potential exists for them to be considered as an unfriendly amendment? In other words, I don't want to delete anything when we may have to vote on it. But do you want to change the motion in any way to show what you've agreed to, or is this accurate the way it's portrayed?
I mean, I'm willing to move forward with the way it's portrayed.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. So the normal procedure now would be to move to a vote on this motion as you currently see it. Given the tenor of the conversation, I would entertain motions to offer an unfriendly amendment, which would require a separate vote. on any aspect. That can be to remove something, or it can be to add something. Commissioner Serban.
I would ask the commission to consider striking number 3 from map 14.
It's an unfriendly amendment to strike number 3 from the map 14 section. Is there a second?
As well as number 6 and, oh, sorry.
Well, okay, again, the commission's time is the commission's time. I'm willing to let the discussion go. Do you have more to add to that motion, or are there going to be a series of motions here?
6 and 4 on map 13 and 14. Sorry, 6 on 13A and 4 on map 14.
Same thing.
6 from 13A and 4 from 13. Okay. So Commissioner Serban, you're making that as a 3-part package.
No, we can do those separately.
You want to?
We can do the
So do we have a
item 3
second?
from 14 separately. I think 6 and 4 should be, we can do all 3 separately then.
Because then we'll have 3 separate votes.
Sure.
Okay. So first, a motion to strike point 3 from map 14. Is there a second? Commissioner Krugliak, thank you. Is there discussion? Commissioner Serban?
Again, unless we're going to consider this potential solution, or are willing to move, if we're willing to move Escondido into District T and consider that for map 14, I think we ought to do that for map 13A. If we're not going to do that for map 13A, then I think that this disadvantages map 14 unfairly, and I think we should strike it.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, David, would you please call the roll for a vote on the motion offered by Commissioner Serban, seconded by Commissioner Krugliak, to strike point 3 from map 14 on this motion?
Thank you. Commissioner Russ?
No.
Commissioner Larson?
Aye.
Commissioner Chen?
No.
Commissioner Krugliak?
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz is absent. Commissioner Dostal is absent. Co-Vice Chair Katarina?
Aye.
Commissioner Pons?
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Garcia?
Um,
I'm not sure what you're talking.
I'm sorry. Remove item 3 from map 14?
Yes.
No. No.
Commissioner Henson?
No.
Commissioner Serban?
Aye.
Chair Bame?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
No.
Commissioner Inman?
Aye.
So with Commissioners Russ, Chen, Garcia, Hanson, and Brown voting no, all other commissioners who are present voting aye, the motion passes. There are it fails. There are 7 affirmative votes and 5 noes. The motion fails to achieve the required affirmative vote.
Thank you. We now move to the motion offered by Commissioner Serban, seconded by Commissioner Krugliak, to strike point 6 from map 13A. Discussion? Commissioner Serban?
I mean, what else is there to say? I think everyone said what needed to be said. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so David, would you please call the roll on the motion to strike point 6 from map 13A in this motion?
Thank you. Co-Vice Chair Katarina,
Nay.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Pons,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
nay,
Chair Bame,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
No.
Co-Vice Chair Garcia,
Nay.
Commissioner Servin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russ,
No.
Commissioner Krugliak,
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz is absent, Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Nay.
Commissioner Dostal is absent. That motion fails. Co-Vice Chair Katarina, Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Russ, and Commissioner Chen voting no. All other commissioners who are present voting aye. The vote is 6-6. The motion fails to achieve the required affirmative vote.
Thank
Never
you.
gonna get anywhere.
We move to the motion offered by Commissioner Serban, seconded by Commissioner Krugliak to strike point 4 from map 14, I believe. Do I have that right? Okay. Discussion, Commissioner Serban?
Everything's been said. Thank you.
Any other discussion? David, would you please call a roll for the vote to remove item 4 from map 14 from this motion?
Thank you. Commissioner Chen,
Nay.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Chair Bame,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
nay,
Commissioner Dostal is absent. Co-Vice Chair Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
No.
Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Pons,
Aye.
Commissioner Krugliak,
Aye.
Commissioner Servin,
You're
Aye.
muted.
Sorry.
Co-Vice Chair Katarina,
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz is absent. Commissioner Russ,
No.
with Commissioners Chen, Brown, Hanson, and Russ voting no. All other commissioners who are present voting aye. The motion fails to achieve the required affirmative vote. The vote is 8 ayes, 4 noes.
Okay.
How many votes do we need?
9. Very well, commissioners, well, let me just ask, are there any other motions regarding additions, amendments, or deletions from the overall motion before us? Seeing none and having exhausted, I'm sorry?
I was just cheering.
And seeing no other requests for the floor, David, would you please call the roll for a vote?
Wait,
on the-
I have a question. I have a question, Chair Bame. If this motion fails, what happens?
We have offered no instructions to Flow to prepare any new maps or data. The maps that we currently have, I think by default, in my estimation, would become the maps posted for the draft map public hearing, meaning 13A, 13B, and 14 in their present form. Flow's only work would likely be on any new draft maps submitted by the public to prepare them and simply do the usual work in preparing tables and all that. Short of that, I think the starting point for the meeting that begins December 2nd, when we get to maps on the agenda, would be to start with map 13A, 13B, and 14 on the table in their present form. And I will reinforce now, I'm going to ask Marguerite and Flo in a moment for any comments they have to offer. But I would simply caution that, and I say this still not knowing how I'm going to vote, but I would caution that if we do not have, if this motion is not approved, commissioners will have very limited opportunity to request new assessments by Flow Analytics simply because of the pressure of time, with the exception that if a meeting was to be offered the week of November 29th, an additional meeting, we could theoretically take it up then. Co-Vice Chair Garcia.
If this motion were to fail, could someone not offer a motion to at least eliminate map 13B, for example, and I'm just gaming it out if this should fail.
I would have much rather had that motion made when I requested, are there any other amendments, changes, or deletions, or additions to this motion? But if that's the preference, it's possible to consider that. However, under the rules, we could not have a vote on this complete motion and then bring some part of it back up without a motion to reconsider. So that would be a minimum of 3 votes.
Can we suspend the rules
discussion
to consider another motion?
It would, if I'm going to defer the commission on this, given that it's 1:06 in the morning, and I just asked if there were any additional changes, but I understand the seriousness of it. So if there are additional, if there's an additional motion or motions to amend the current big motion, we can take them now. Now, let me pause there because I completely admit I'm a little tired too. Marguerite and David, are there any, am I misstating anything? Is there anything that you would want to clarify the commission for the commission?
I don't see an issue with continuing with amendments.
Okay. Marguerite?
I agree with that.
Okay, good. So Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I just like to, I think, remind the commission, as I understand this process, we're not voting on the merits of any of these amendments. These are simply requests to Flow to do analysis. From our discussion, it feels like we're thinking that we're voting yes or no on the merits of these, and that is not my impression. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand, we're not voting on the merits of any of these.
Yeah. Commissioner Chen, I want to be cautious about that because I, for one, am at least partially, and in some ways, primarily voting on an issue of practicality. When the vote is split this closely, I don't myself see a likelihood that the motion would pass in another week and a half, although it's certainly possible, but I would prefer to save the time to get all the work done that I've been referring to. So I can only speak for myself on that, but I wanted to allow the possibility. Commissioners may be voting on the substance of the motion as they consider it, or they may be considering how it impacts on our process. Commissioner Servin.
Yeah, I think that we're sort of implying that we're agreeing, at least in some sense, on the merits to some of these suggestions. Otherwise, we wouldn't feel necessary to explore them.
That is certainly a valid point of view. Barbara.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm with Flo that there's no questions, concerns, or comments before proceeding, if the chair will allow.
I was going to wait until we got.
Oh, I apologize.
Change, but that's fine. No, it's
Okay.
probably a good time to ask.
Thank you.
Especially given some other time differences. Flow Analytics, do you want to comment now?
Yeah, that'd be great. As I look this over, my thoughts are that most of these changes are reasonably straightforward and fairly quick to implement, especially because we're looking at specifically 2 maps and we have defined things like moving Coronado from one district to another. It's a very defined change. The concern I have is obviously the time. Since we're into Saturday, we have a few days to turn this around by Monday so that county staff can post them appropriately on Tuesday afternoon. So there are going to be things when we use our discretion, when we're trading communities between specifically, I think districts 2, 3, and 4, and the variations that we can produce in that time might be limited, but I do think we have enough here to make a good effort towards what we've heard from the public and all the commissioners tonight in that quick turnaround. So yes, we will make it work.
And Alex, I do not mean this, and thank you for that, and thank you for the hard work possibility. I don't mean this to influence you one way or the other, but you would certainly take the capacity to look at variations on whether or not you could do something similar to what you did on Coronado contiguity tonight, i.e., you might need to show more than one variation that isn't even tasked in here because of an unexpected implication from the motion, correct?
Yeah, correct.
I only bring that out, commissioners, because again, I do not want to influence you one way or the other on the decision, but I do want to remind you that the more variations and issues we have to discuss at our next meeting, the longer it's going to go. I'm perfectly happy for us to discuss all of this and more, but I will expect commissioners to devote the time and energy to give them all fair consideration. Commissioner Chen, then Commissioner Serban.
So just my opinion of the process standpoint, if we look at these amendments and say, boy, if I disagree with any one of those 10, I'm going to vote no, then we probably just wasted a lot of time. If we say, you know, we're going to look at these, but we're not voting on the merits of them, we have a chance of passing this. To your point, David, if it is a practicality issue of how much do we want to discuss at the next meeting, I guess I would just like us to be kind of aligned on what we're actually voting on here. That would make more sense to me.
Let me frame this as procedurally as I can. The question on my mind goes back to what I said at the beginning of the discussion. I remain perfectly comfortable if we have no motions come out of this meeting, because I feel like we have enough information from the analysis we have in front of us and from tonight's discussion to move forward. But I weigh that in terms of how valuable the additional analysis would be, which it certainly would be. It's always better to have more information, alongside our ability to analyze, discuss, and move forward on that information, which causes me great concern given the discussion tonight. I have no problem, and I do not consider it a waste of time to have revealing votes. In fact, in at least one of these motions, if I have my record right, the motion could have been adopted by friendly amendment because both the motioner and the seconder voted in favor. But that is their choice to make on when and how they want to exercise their rights as motioner and seconder. What I find worth attending to is whether we need to go through all this, especially given some of the votes that we just saw, which is not what I would call a simple vote above quorum for approval. Whether it's better to have that discussion potentially yet again, and I think there's certainly some strong feelings that we've heard that would require that discussion again, or it would be better to simply move forward with this tonight's discussion in mind. I am perfectly comfortable either way as chair. And I take your point that commissioners should be aware of whether they're considering the points on substance or just things that they want to see flow analytics attend to and provide information on. I completely understand the point. Commissioner Serban.
Thank you, Chair. So Are we just a quick question? Are we allowed to suspend the vote on this motion right now to vote on discarding 13B?
If I'm thinking right, and again, I'll look for confirmation from the clerk and legal counsel, we could entertain a motion at this point to remove the entire 13B part of the motion. That would require a motion, a seconder, discussion, and then a vote. Commissioner Hanson?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Bame, I wasn't finished.
Let me take Commissioner Hanson, then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
You're muted, I'm afraid.
The reason I voted against the previous amendments was because I didn't see the value in eliminating the information that would be gained by looking at the various possibilities. It had nothing to do with how I felt about the content of either map. I feel as though the motion has been made and the vote has been called, and I think we need to move forward.
Commissioner Serban?
So I guess I just wanted to say that out of this meeting, I wanted to arrive at a clearer understanding of what elements of a final map can achieve successful support from this commission. I'm not sure I've gotten any closer to that, but maybe I have from this discussion, but I don't know if by creating, I don't know, 10 more variations of 2 maps, we're gonna get anywhere closer to that. I was hoping we wouldn't come out of this meeting with even more maps, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
All right. So
Chair Bame, you asked a question and I don't know that I answered it procedurally. There was a motion and a second on the floor. I don't see how 13B would be an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. So I don't think a motion to eliminate 13B would be appropriate at this point.
Oh, I'm
That's my
sorry.
advice to you as the chair, and you can.
No, I think, David, you're absolutely right. I am very sorry. And I was clear in my words that I was misstating it. I had understood Commissioner Serban's motion to be to remove 13A from this. Commissioner Serban, I think David corrected me completely right. You were saying to remove 13B. No, that's something we would have to take up after this vote because that's not related to the motion on the floor. David, thank you very much for the correction on that. Appreciate that. All right. Assuming no further discussion on the motion before us, the motion by Co-Vice Chair Katarina, seconded by Commissioner Inman. David, would you please call a roll for the vote on the motion to move forward maps 13A and 14 with the following specific tasks to flow analytics as displayed on the screen?
Thank you. Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Russ,
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz is absent. Co-Vice Chair Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Krugliak,
Noting my extreme reluctance to endorse Coronado in District 1, aye.
Commissioner Serban,
No.
Commissioner Larson,
No,
I don't
Chair
know.
Bame,
Abstain?
Okay, that's it.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Dostal is absent. Commissioner Pons,
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Katarina.
Aye.
With Chair Bame abstaining, Commissioners Serban and Larson voting no, all other commissioners who are present voting aye. Motion passes, 9 affirmative votes, 2 noes.
Very good. Thank you, commissioners.
And 1 abstention.
Are there any other motions or discussion points before I begin to preview how we are wrapping up and adjourn the meeting? Commissioner Pons.
Yes, I'd like to motion that we remove draft map 13B from consideration.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to remove 13B from further consideration. Is that okay? From Commissioner Pons, seconded by Commissioner Servin. Is there discussion? Commissioner Russ?
There's no reason to remove it. It's like saying we were removing 11 or 10, or, I mean, we can go back to any one of these if if somebody feels very strongly about it. If we remove 13B, then let's remove 12 and 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. No, there's no need to do this.
Thank you. Commissioner Pons?
I understand what you're saying. I thought the end game was to identify 2 potential draft maps to move forward for further discussion and decision, that we could get to a single draft map and then a final formal map by the 15th of December. And I got to tell you, 13B was in the mix of the last 3 maps and it didn't fall out. And I thought that any elements of 13B that was under consideration would have been included in the previous motion for draft maps 13A and 14. So
Yeah,
that's the way I thought the process was going. If
Yeah,
I
I
was
think-
mistaken, Commissioner Ross, then I was mistaken.
No, I don't think there's any need to say we remove it. No, we've decided to go look at 13A modified and 14 modified. Let's look at them.
You can always go back.
But we may come back and say, gee,
Mhm.
I like 13B better than 13A modified or 14.
I think we have at least 26 maps under consideration.
Yeah, we
If
do.
we apply that litmus test, then we can go back to any one of those maps and pull them forward for further consideration. And
Yes.
I just don't think that we should do that. I think it's
Well, yeah,
counterproductive at this point.
and I don't think we will. I don't think that's likely, but I don't see any need to just throw them in the trash can.
Okay, Commissioner.
That's all.
Okay, Commissioner Servin.
I see this motion as mainly intended to get public comment from the public in a more directed way. I mean, the motion that we just passed says we're moving forward with considering 13A and 14. I didn't hear a lot of desire from this commission to continue considering 13B. And so I think we ought to communicate that to the public and let them know, we really want feedback on 13A and 14, really.
Thank you. Commissioner Pons?
No, I'm done. That was my
Okay,
position.
understood.
Thank you.
Any additional comment? Okay, so David, would you please call the roll for a vote on the motion offered by Commissioner Pons, seconded by Commissioner Servin, to remove draft map 13B from consideration?
Thank you. Chair Bame,
Nay?
Commissioner Inman,
Nay.
Co-Vice Chair Katerina,
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz is absent, Commissioner Dostal is absent, Commissioner Hanson,
No,
Commissioner Larson, Commissioner Larson,
Passed out.
where'd he go?
aye.
Go back.
See on video? Can anybody see him?
No,
It's gone.
I'm going to record that as absent. Commissioner
David,
Russ? Yes,
David, I would prefer we treat that as a potential technical difficulty.
okay.
Let's return when we finished with voting for the other commissioners.
Commissioner Russ,
No,
Co-Vice Chair Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
No,
Commissioner Krugliak,
Aye.
Commissioner Pons,
Aye.
Commissioner Servin,
We got to make decisions. This is an obvious yes.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
With Chair Boehm, Commissioner Inman, Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Russ, Commissioner Brown voting no, all other commissioners who are present voting aye, and we have a technical difficulty with Commissioner Larson. The motion fails to achieve the required affirmative vote. We have 6 ayes, 5 noes.
Very good. Thank you, David. Commissioner Krugliak.
Comment for lessons learned that we need to amend our bylaws to have a majority based on the people who are there rather than this 9 all the time.
I appreciate the idea. This, though, is a matter, council, correct me if I'm wrong, that is actually in elections code. We don't have the ability to change it. Commissioner Serban, I'm sorry, Margarita, do I have that correct?
You have that correct.
Thank you. Commissioner Serban.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. I'm concerned that the end game that we wanted to achieve as a result of this meeting was 2 maps. It doesn't sound like we've achieved that. I have heard your concerns, Chair Boehm, about the timeline that we're working with. I have expressed my concerns from the beginning of this process about trying to compact our work such that we meet this punishing deadline. I think that we ought to be open to considering taking more time if we need it. We've stated publicly our commitment to doing this thing right. And I think that's more important than doing it quick.
I understand that, but in some ways, my answer is exactly the same as it is to Commissioner Krugliak. We have a procedure in place under law, one that commissioners are well familiar with our efforts to gain time, not least for additional public input, which is still valued, but I personally still wish we had time to absorb more. I will offer some further thoughts on this in a moment. Commissioner Brown.
yes, we're not eliminating map 13B. We're just putting it aside. It's not going forward. It's going aside with all the other ones that we haven't removed from our selection. So you could go back at any point and go back to the other ones. I think there was only one map that we formally removed in the very beginning. But after that, we never removed any of the others. So if you wanted to go back to any one of those, you could technically, I think. And that's what we're doing with this map 13B is we're just putting it off to the side because these are the only 2 that we want to look at right now. And with these changes to them. And that's what we're going to be considering. But literally one of us could say, well, let's bring up 13B or 6 or 5 or something like that next week. And it could come back in, as far as I understand. Is that right?
It is, I'll just give a quick procedural answer. The maps are technically still under consideration. The formal tasking tonight involves Flo doing work on the 2 maps in the motion and not on any other maps other than to process publicly submitted maps under our standing guidance. But commissioners certainly could draw on any previous map that has not been ruled out for discussion. What we would have to look at the time it was raised is whether such a map could be brought forward for consideration of vote. I frankly haven't considered that possibility and would want to consult counsel, our demographer, our SPOC, and commissioners on whether we could do that or not. But in terms of consulting the maps for ideas, you're absolutely right. They can be consulted. Commissioner Kugliak, then Commissioner Pons, then Commissioner Servin, noting the time.
You're such a diplomat, Chair Bain. The actual answer is no. We cannot bring up any other map except for 13A and 14 because we are at November 20th and have to approve a map on December 15th. Probably the proper motion, which I think is probably what Commissioner Pons wishes he'd said, is we're throwing out every map we've ever discussed except for the variations we've put forward today for flow, because we can't be just going back to map 2 or map 3 or map 11 or map 13B and bringing it up on a whim and saying, let's discuss it. We can't, it's done. So I mean, I think probably the technical answer is no, but the technical answer is what Chair Bain gave, but the accurate answer is no. We cannot go back to any other map.
And Commissioner Kugliak, I have learned at great pains that the art of diplomacy is quite often to deal with the unreality because others will say the reality, which I appreciate you saying the way you did. I will add this. It would take an action by the commission to move another map forward than these two maps. I would also note from a process point of view that I did say at the beginning, our goal would be to move one or perhaps two maps forward. That condition has been met. I will talk in a minute about the timeline. It's actually perhaps a little more ambitious than even you just framed. But for right now, let me leave it at that and turn to Commissioner Pons.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kugliak. With all due respect, I stated exactly the way I wanted to. It should not be considered for moving forward for further consideration. It can be used to pull elements of it forward, be included in maps 13A and 14, but it shouldn't be for consideration for, let's review map 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 again. But I got to tell you, when I look back at those maps, there could be something, Mac, that's really attractive. And I could go from map 6, line item 14 could apply to draft map 14. And it makes it easy to go find it. It's like a repository of information. That's why I said that. So all the maps, the previous maps, could be repository information we could draw from and reference. But I just got to tell you, I think we have just left open Pandora's box, and it's going to be tremendously challenging to meet these deadlines. And the discussion at 03:30 in the morning, and we have created more work by not eliminating map 13B than we could ever even consider. So I think we're going to live to regret this decision. I'm going to wait and see. But I just thought at the beginning, I used the word end game for a reason. We agreed that the end game was to move forward one or two maps. And those two maps would be map 13A and 14. We agreed to that. Now we are reversing that decision. And I don't know what end game is now, but I'll wait and see. But thank you very much.
Really, thank you for that, Commissioner. We are out of motions at the moment. I don't see any requests for additional motions. So I'm going to briefly describe where we are in the process and then adjourn. Commissioner Servin.
Do we need to move to continue? Oh, I guess here's my question. 13B, are we still going to include it as a map that's under consideration?
No.
No, Commissioners, 13B at present has the exact same status as other maps that have not moved forward to this point.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the maps resulting from today's motions will be prepared by Flo and posted online by, I believe it's the afternoon of November 23rd, correct, Barbara?
I'm trying to figure out what date it is. Yes.
Okay, we'll come back.
Today's Saturday.
Okay. In any case, it needs, with regard to the statute, it needs to be posted 7 days before the draft map public hearing on December 2nd. We will begin our next meeting on December 2nd at 3 p.m., where we will hear such additional input as at least an ability to elect analysis of these maps from Dr. Christian Gross and a legal assessment of these maps by Special Voting Rights Act counsel Bruce Adelson. We will leave it to the contractors, Flo and counsel, to decide whether those analyses of two maps need to be merged or not into one presentation. On that same day, December 2nd, the IRC also will hold its second and final draft map public hearing, beginning promptly at a time certain of 5 p.m. Anticipating a large volume of public comments and need for IRC action on a number of issues, the December 2nd meeting likely will be continued sometime after the conclusion of the draft map public hearing into an all virtual session that would begin at 10 a.m. on Friday, December 3rd. And I'll add the details of the in-person component of the December 2nd meeting in just a moment. I'll take commissioner comments in one moment before we move to adjournment, I promise. But I do want to remind members of the public, and there are still a considerable number here with us, thank you for staying, that input remains welcome and possible to submit. The approved IRC timeline sets a deadline for public submittal of maps and community of interest input via the Community Builder tool and District Scenario Modeler tool of December 2nd. In other words, at that point, those tools will no longer be available for public input. Obviously, the earlier comment would be preferable if at all possible. The earlier we receive that comment, the greater the chance, albeit slight, that we'll be able to consider it alongside other business. Before I move to adjournment, Commissioners Chen and Servin, I would ask you to keep these to points of information and frame as a question. Commissioner Chen.
I suggest we serve dinner to the commissioners on December 2nd since we're starting at 3 o'clock. It's a serious suggestion.
We will take that under advisement. Thank you. Commissioner Servin.
I'd like to voice my strong objection to this Friday 10 a.m. meeting. I'm maybe the only one in this commission that has a full-time job, but that is a working day for me and for many other members of the public. I'm very concerned about how the public might be able to participate when most people work. So I know why we're doing this, and I know we have this devotion to this deadline, and I think that we owe it to the public.
That's not.
I think we owe it to the public to.
That's not a point, but that's not a point of inquiry, and we really are out of time for discussion.
We owe it to the public to explain to the public why we need to meet the deadline, and rather than take more time to do this, to do this the way we want to do it.
I'm about to. Okay. The approved IRC timeline that this commission voted on and was shared with the public for several weeks now included a meeting on December 2nd, at which time, at the end of that meeting, we would agree on a map to consider for adoption at our next meeting on December 9th. That meeting is to result in a vote to approve that map in time to do two things: produce the statutorily required final report that is also due by December 15th and cannot be completed until we have an adopted map, as well as to ensure appropriate processing time for the adopted map. That is the timeline this commission adopted. I have to admit that I had some hope that we could meet earlier on December 2nd, that we would be in a position to move very fast, very efficiently forward on one map with just a few questions, and perhaps wrap up our business later on December 2nd. That has not been the choice of the commission to proceed that way. We now have a very ambitious set of matters we have to discuss, at least on the 2nd. But if commissioners wish to proceed on the 2nd, beyond midnight into the 3rd in continuing session, that is a choice for the commission to make. Since I do not see that as the only option that the commission may wish to consider, I had to make a choice and let the public know about how we were going to meet the deadline we approved ourselves. These are commission decisions that were made by the commission, posted and notified to the public, and I think discussed several times. So it should not come as a surprise to anyone. In fact, I think we mentioned this at our last meeting, that there was a possibility of a meeting on December 3rd. And frankly, Commissioner, I have no way to see reaching conclusion on December 3rd on a single map for adoption on December 9th if we were to start it later in the day. I
understand the deadline, Chair Barry. My
have-
question is, why do we need to meet it other than the statutory requirement?
Among other things, Commissioner, because we voted on that timeline and have proved it.
I understand that as well, but we're now faced with the question of whether we can meet it.
Commissioner, I was very, very clear about my preference for coming out of tonight's meeting with one map with as few questions as possible. The commission made the decision it did. You were certainly an active participant in those discussions, and we now have the situation that we have, and that's fine. Again, I would be willing to consider an additional meeting the week of November 29th, but I will need to figure out how that would proceed, whether we could proceed, because we will need time for the required analyses that I just described by Dr. Gross and Mr. Adelson. Again, something this commission was well aware of and even discussed tonight. We are simply in a very, very challenging situation. I'm sure we will meet it. We will rise to that challenge. I am sure that the public will continue to participate robustly, even on short notice, as they did today. And I'm sure we will find a way to pull it all together. But I am not willing to reconsider commission decisions simply because of the decisions that were taken tonight. The commission made its decisions then. The commission made its decisions tonight. That is what we are going to proceed on. I will be clear with.
I'll just note, Chair Bame, that you
have-
said that we were committed to
Commissioner Serban, let me
doing this
finish.
openly and transparently, and that we could
Commissioner Serban,
consider changing the deadline if we needed to.
please let me finish. I will ask commissioners that if you are inclined to suggest a meeting the week of November 29th before December 2nd, please be in touch with IRC staff because we need to follow a certain procedure for that. Commissioner Serban, is there a question?
I guess my question is, why aren't we considering extending our timeline?
As far as I know, there was
In the past, you've previously made statements that that committed us to an open and public process. By committing ourselves to this timeline, it seems like we're compromising that commitment.
Commissioner, number one, I would say that's an issue to have been brought up when we approved the timeline. Number
did bring
two,
it
I
up.
would say there was no request that I'm aware of to reconsider the timeline at this meeting. Number three, I suppose a request could be made to add it to our agenda for December 2nd. I would need to take advice with counsel about whether that's even possible at this stage, in fairness to the public, given that we did not take advantage of an opportunity to do so in our last several meetings. But we can certainly look into it. However, I want to be very, very clear. The public has been made clearly aware of this timeline. We have shared it with them. We have talked about it. We have posted it. It is our timeline. And to change that timeline at this point could arguably raise questions of what we share and how we share it with the public. I want to be very clear. These are decisions for the commission to make, not the chair, not staff, not individual commissioners. It's the commission, and that requires action by the commission, given that it was taken with action by the commission. So we move on to item 7, adjournment. That concludes the business before the Independent Redistricting Commission this evening. As I mentioned, our next meeting will be an IRC special meeting, at least as presently scheduled, on Thursday, December 2nd at 3 p.m., which will include a draft map public hearing that will begin promptly at a time certain of 5 p.m. Both the special meeting and the draft map public hearing will be held in Linda Vista at the County Office of Education, located at 6401 Linda Vista Road in room 401-402, the zip code 92111. And there will be accommodation for participation via Zoom. That meeting will continue to an all virtual session for mapping activities, either through the evening of December 2nd or as presently scheduled on December 3rd, beginning at 10 a.m. More details, draft maps, and meeting links for our county IRC are available on our website, www.drawyourcommunity.com. Thanks again for attending tonight. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. There, Commissioner Larson, I made sure. And a very, very pleasant evening and weekend to you all. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good
I
night.
just want to thank our translators as well.
Thank you
Thank you
very
all.
much. Muchas
Bye-bye.
gracias.
Thank you, everyone, for staying on until this late hour.
For the record, the meeting is adjourned at 1:45 a.m.
Thank you, David.
Wow.
Whoa.
Night.